Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra metagame breakdown. This week we're gonna look back at the last 1 to 2 weeks before the current new balance patch that just dropped yesterday, and take a look at what the metagame has been like, and I'll also talk about how the balance changes affect some of these decks and how I expect some of them to shift around based on the balance patch, and try to give you my thoughts and some predictions. Since we can only look at past data, we obviously cannot look at like the first day or so with the new balance patch, but we'll do that in next week's metagame breakdown, of course. But looking at what the metagame looked like up until the balance patch gives us an idea what we are working from now with the new patch, which I hope is also helpful to you guys. It's always a bit awkward on these transition phases from one patch to another, but I didn't want to just skip this week since I think there's still enough useful and interesting stuff to talk about. Alright, before we do that, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button down below to not miss out on future content. Turn on the bell icon, and before we dive into the content, I'll briefly introduce you to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN, one of the leading virtual private network providers out there. A virtual private network keeps your data secure and yourself anonymous while using the internet. NordVPN comes with super fast servers, allows you to unlock your favorite entertainment websites like Netflix. They provide a 30-day money-back guarantee. They also have an included cybersecurity suite, which acts as an ad blocker to boot. They don't lock any of your data, provide a 24/7 customer support, and you can use it on up to 6 simultaneous connections, so one account covers most or all of your electronic devices. And most importantly, they don't have any bandwidth limit, so you can use it non-stop without it getting throttled, which is particularly important for heavy users like us. It also won multiple awards and comes highly recommended by top technology experts. So if you're still surfing online without a VPN, now is the time to change that. Get NordVPN now, 70% off for a 3-year plan, including 1 month extra for free using the code ManuS or the personalized link in the description down below. And now on to today's content. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, let's get started. So, as usual, first we talk about the 5 most played decks, and then we look at the 5 highest win rate decks. There's been a bit of a change apparently from mobalytics. I think last time we looked at the data, which was since release, if I'm not mistaken. And now it's more clear on the site that it is from patch 1.1, which didn't introduce any card changes, but still was a patch. So I think they'll do any patch, card changes or not. So usually the data will be 1 week, then the second week added. So the second week we will be looking at both weeks combined effectively. And then there's a patch that may or may not introduce card changes, but from there on they are starting to count new, so to speak. So we will usually at most look at 2 weeks combined. So the shift from 1 week to another will be will create smaller changes in the metagame the second week around, but it will still give us something to talk about. And it's certainly better than what it seemed like last time, that it is a much larger time frame. And I hope we will soon get a view of sorting by time frame, so we can sort like Monday to Monday or something like this, or at least get a 1 week window filter option, which I don't have right now. Also, they updated the data later this week because of the patch, I think, than normal. So the data was just updated 12 hours before I started recording this video, according to the website. So the data is very fresh and includes all data up until activation of the balance patch, basically. I would assume, because that's what the 12-hour time frame aligns with. That's like about 12 hours ago, 13 hours ago, the balance patch went live. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the first deck. First, we have Demacia with Misfortune and Quinn, and Relentless Pursuit. That's basically what Scouts looks like by now. We moved away from the Bilgewater Scout heavier stuff. It's basically just mono Demacia, a bit more aggressive than the Garen mid-range version, since we have 6 1-drops here. We have Relentless Pursuit, which isn't that great in the mid-range version, and overall a bit lower curve and more punch. And the Relentless Pursuits play really well. Sorry about that. The Relentless Pursuits play really well with Quinn, Misfortune, and Grizzled Ranger, giving you much more extra attacks and help you level those up. So yeah, this is the 5th most popular deck before the balance patch went live. Keep in mind, we are still only looking at the Masters metagame. I'm a bit surprised by this, honestly, because I'm not seeing this a whole lot. Like, if I see Demacia, it's usually the Vi version or just Mono Demacia more than this. But seemingly it's still pretty popular and also is doing fairly well in terms of win rate. This is one of the decks that certainly gets affected by the metagame, by the balance changes, but I wouldn't expect it to go away. Like, Demacia will just kind of shift in what the most popular version will look like. It might not be the Scout Misfortune heavy thing anymore, because with Grizzled Ranger nerfed, I'm not sure if people will keep playing it and if it is the best direction to go. And it might be that people will go back to a bit of a bigger, more mid-rangey take, which then means Misfortune and Quinn aren't as great and will be replaced with Fiora and Garen, and lean more into Unyielding Spirit and stuff like that. But Demacia will almost certainly be still one of the top 5 best and most popular decks. It will just look different from now and will have less obnoxious cards like Grizzled Ranger, since they will either abandon it or it will not be as strong anymore. Alright, in 4th place we have Corinna Control, another deck that was affected by the balance changes, with Brute Awakening reverted to its former state. I think the card will probably be abandoned, or at least drastically reduced in numbers. My guess would be abandoned, because the card is just not great at 6. At 5 it was amazing for the deck, but at 6 I think they will either go down in copies or probably abandon it entirely. And Vi lost a health point, which makes her also less powerful. Not sure how the deck is going to adapt and how much it is going to hurt the deck. It could actually hurt the deck deceptively a lot, and it could drop enough in popularity that maybe some other control deck could take over. But that is a bit too early to call yet, since the deck kind of was a thing already before the Brute Awakening change, I think, and just really took off with the Brute Awakening change. So it might still stick around and just adapt a bit, maybe go back to 3 Skitterers, a 2nd Ruination, and like something else in that slot, for example. So we'll see, or maybe just like keep 1 Brute Awakening, I don't know. I think the deck is certainly notably weaker than before, but not dead or unplayable or bad, probably. So I would expect it to stick around in some capacity. In 3rd place, we have the Vi Ezreal deck. This also got affected a bit by the balance changes. Its Deep Meditation costs now 5 and 3. The 3 part is actually not that bad. Obviously, more expensive is always worse, but now Deep Meditation is another 3-cost card for Heimerdinger, which can matter sometimes. The deck already has a lot of 3, so it's also kind of awkward in that it might be a bit too heavy on 3, but this particular version, since Deny got nerfed quite some time ago, only has 6 actual 3-cost cards, since Flash of Brilliance costs 0 in that regard. You can always play all your Flash of Brilliances along an actual 3-cost card. Deep Meditation is pretty underwhelming now, but there's no better option, so I think the deck will just have to stick with it anyway. And Vi got nerfed a bit, so the deck certainly is weakened, but not in a major capacity probably, and I would expect it to remain potentially similarly popular and powerful, given that a lot of other stuff got nerfed too, and Burn got nerfed, which was a really bad matchup for this deck, like really, really bad. So Burn's popularity probably going down notably will be a good thing for this deck. So yeah, this is not going anywhere, I think. In second place, we have Karma Lux, with Karma now costing 6 as well. Makes it really awkward. As you can see, the balance changes are already all in effect on mobalytics with these screenshots. So Karma and Lux both being a 6 and not curving that well anymore is certainly awkward. Although, to be fair, the deck already had a 5 anyway, so it's not as bad, but Karma is just also notably worse as a 6-drop. And then Meditation also being nerfed matters here. Grizzled Ranger being nerfed matters a lot here, especially in terms of defensive capabilities against other like 4 health units. Loyal Badger Bear only being a 3-4 isn't that big of a deal because it's still a very good defensive unit, and it hampered its offensive capabilities more than anything, and this deck cares more about the defensive than the offensive capabilities. So a 3-4 Badger Bear is still mostly doing what the deck wants it to do, while a 4-3 Badger Bear would have been really bad for the deck, for example. Not sure how well this deck can take the changes. We'll see about it. I think the Karma change, together with all the other changes, like there are a lot of cards that changed in this deck. This deck should probably drop in popularity and power level. Notably, it might still be one of the bigger decks, but I don't think it will be as popular and successful as it currently is or like was up until the balance patch. And in number 1, to no one's surprise, we have Burn with almost 11,000 games. That's like a big jump. If we look at even the second place deck with 8,000, 11,000 is amazing. The deck is just really powerful and really versatile, as we saw last week when I talked about it. The matchups are all pretty solid. Like Karma Lux is a deck that can keep up with it, but even that matchup is probably a decent amount favored for Burn, for example. But now with the balance changes, Rearguard is probably going to be phased out for Teemo, since now Rearguard went from the best 1-drop in the deck to suddenly basically the worst. It's a bad Saboteur. It can't block, it can't deal 1 damage guaranteed, and it dies to all the things that Saboteur does. So it's just a bad Saboteur now, which is kind of sad. Like now there's no 2 health unit anymore, 1-drop anymore in these colors. There are like only 2 to 3 reasonable in the game. Citria, Butcher, and to an extent Academic, which is kind of important because there are a lot of 1 damage and especially like 1/1s that make playing 1-drops in your aggro deck with 1 health quite punishing. And yeah, that is now a bigger problem, but Teemo helps sidestep this, so that's a nice adaptation there. But Boomcrew Rookie now dying to a lot of blockers in 1 attack, only getting 1 attack in, is a big deal. Another reason to get rid of that second static shock for the 3rd transfusion to help mitigate that a bit and keep Rookie alive. Rookie is, at least in this deck, still good enough that you want to run it because it's basically a burn spell on legs, which is kind of exactly what a burn deck wants. But before, it was very, very likely to get at least 2 triggers in with Rookie, while now it's more often than not will be 1 rather than 2, which makes a big difference in winning especially closer games. So Burn will lose a decent amount in power level and drop in popularity, but I would expect it to stick around in the top 5 potentially, because the changes are not that drastic that I think the deck is suddenly bad. It's just not as raw powerful anymore, and it's much more containable by fighting its early game, which before was a lot harder. And then if you fight and stifle the early game better, means you get to the mid game with a higher health total, which means you can potentially kill them or take over before you die, making Burn possibly a much more mediocre deck and maybe pushing it down to tier 2, but we'll see about that. So yeah, that's the top 5 before the balance patch, and my thoughts on how they will be affected and might shift around given the balance changes. And now let's talk about the 5 highest win rate decks. In 5th place, we have Ezreal Vi, which is kind of interesting and actually kind of convenient now that Karma has been nerfed. This might be an interesting direction to go. It already had a better win rate than Ezreal Karma lately, it seems, from the stats. And the only balance change here is losing 1 health point on Vi and the nerf to Deep Meditation. So basically it's the same effect as on Vi Ezreal, Vi Heimerdinger. So they're also like kind of similar decks in a way. So yeah, give this a try if you haven't yet. This might still be a very solid option to go for Ezreal, especially with the Karma nerf going forward. Next we have Vi Heimerdinger. As you can see, win rate is fairly close, so I guess if you want to play Ionia, Piltover and so on, Vi Heimerdinger still seems to be a better option just based on stats, especially given that the sample size is also higher for this. As a side note, I chose decks with 1,000 games or more as sort of a threshold. The Ezreal deck is like barely below it with 977, but I figured it's close enough to include it over some more redundant stuff with also a potentially lower win rate to show off some more diversity. You might still be better off with Vi Heimerdinger, but if you're looking for an Ezreal deck, Vi Ezreal might be an interesting option. Next we have the Burn deck. It's not just popular, it's also good, as you can see. 58.4%. Third highest win rate overall before the patch. And that is probably partially deflated or inflated, depending on what side you want to look at it, by a lot of mirror matches, that since this data is not purged for mirror matches, and also a wider range of skill playing the archetype. I think there are a lot more like weaker players playing Burn, and actually also kind of fewer strong players playing Burn. So if we would have more better and less weaker players play Burn, we would get closer to the realistic win rate of the deck, which I think is actually higher, and I think it might easily be, if piloted properly, the highest win rate or one of the highest win rate decks in the game right now across the board, since it has so few like negative matchups, and the worst matchup is around 40%, which is ridiculous. That just shows how strong the deck is and how important the balance changes were that just happened, and we'll see how they affect this win rate and how far they push it down. Next we have the Demacia deck of choice. I only included one Demacia deck. Here the highest win rate, best performing. Demacia deck has been a bit more mid-rangey of an approach with Fiora Vi. There's also a Lucian Vi version, but the Fiora Vi version had a higher win rate, so I decided to take the Fiora Vi list as an example. Otherwise, it's basically sort of the Bannerman mid-range deck, just with Vi over Garen, and because of Vi, I guess people are including Relentless Pursuit here, which they didn't in the Garen version. It didn't make much sense. I'm still not sold that it's worth it here, and I'm still kind of a bigger fan of just playing Garen and Unyielding Spirit, but this is what more people are playing and doing well with for now. So this is less about my preference and opinion and more about the data and what people are actually doing. So just my thoughts here to go along with it. And the highest win rate before the balance patch, actually kind of surprisingly, is the almost mono Bilgewater deck, splashing Piltover and so on for like some additional burn and Rookie. Not sure if this is the best version of this, but given the performance, this clearly seems to indicate that there is some form of deck there with the heavy Bilgewater core. Twisted Fate is a really powerful card. Gangplank is pretty solid. All the like card steal cards are highly efficient, cheap card draw. Riptide Rex is a bit of an underrated, underplayed, powerful top end. And yeah, the win rate of close to 60%, which is like notably higher than even the second best performing deck, means there's certainly something here. I've seen versions that splash Demacia here instead of Piltover, like play Redeemer and Radiant Guardian, for example, which I kind of like better, so I would recommend giving that a try. And otherwise, yeah, I have tried some other versions with this, like with Shadow Isles in the past, and was kind of underwhelmed, but maybe I should give it another go, since it clearly seems to be doing quite well for itself, at least before the balance patch. And while this specific version is affected by the balance patch with Rookie, once you play another splash like Demacia or Shadow Isles, you end up with 0 nerfed cards in the deck, so this might actually become even better now with the balance changes, since I don't think anything that changed affects it negatively, neither the buffs nor the nerfs I would guess taking away stuff that this deck actively preys on, because it seems like more of a generic, flexible, powerful thing rather than something that preys on a specific strategy, from my experience and just theory crafting. So yeah, this could be an interesting thing to explore and find the best version and like the best direction and the best version of with the balance changes. So yeah, give it a go. All right, that's it with the top 5 most popular and top 5 highest win rate decks before the balance patch, and my thoughts on how they're gonna be affected by the balance patch and how things might develop down the line. As usual, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, turn on notification icon for more, and let me know in the comments what you guys think. I'm always open to your constructive feedback and stuff you would like me to cover and talk about and include in the future to yeah, make the best content possible for you guys. Yeah. Before I leave you guys, make sure to check out the sponsor links in the description down below, both for LOR Guardian, for the awesome deck tracker, and of course for the great VPN sponsorship deal that keeps your internet secure and anonymous, and also helps support the content. Yeah, that's it again for this time. I'm your host, ManuS. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.